ways they've implemented. I think that's the richness that's currently out there within the evidence base. I do think I'm more optimistic about it actually, because in policy it's moving quite quickly. We have policies across England, Scotland, and Wales at the moment which are pro pharmacogenomics and implementation into the NHSs. It's just that next step, isn't it? Which I think you're hitting to for, which is how do you now implement it and make it successful with its implementation? But it's in policy. I think it's taking that direction. But the next bit will be how do you make it work?
I think the trick is selling the benefits, really, isn't it? It sounds really exciting, but actually, so what? It's clear reductions in harm, which means less people in hospital, which means longer life, etc.
When you look at the sort of evidence base behind it, we're noticing, I think we can all appreciate that, 5 to 8% hospital admissions are related to medicines. When we're looking at adverse drug reactions contributing to nearly 22,000 deaths within the NHS in England, £100 million of avoidable harm related to medicines, there's lots of opportunities to make some interventions. And when you look at the list of drugs that have drug-dream relationships, I'm sure all of us have either dispensed it, prescribed it, know about it, and think, actually, we ask and we advise patients on this, but really, do we look into it? Do we understand why someone experiences a side effect to this medicine? It's not interacting with anything else, but is it because of the individual variations that an individual suffers that is causing that response to be slightly different?
Can I just pull you up before we finish on that, Steve, on something you said? You called it clopidogrel. I think you'll find it's clopidogrel.
Oh, don't get me started on that. The pharmacopoeia is quite clear that it is on the second syllable. So clopidogrel. I rest my case. So thanks, Ravi. So that's really what I call bucket medicine to personalised medicine. That's where we're headed, and it's coming to a pharmacy near you. So get with the programme. Obviously, the most important thing about coming on the Oral Apothecary is to have a think about what would you like to offer us as a desert island drug, Ravi?
My drug of choice is going to be codeine.
Ooh, controversial.
Yeah, there's a number of reasons why I've chosen codeine. Well, there's probably two in all fairness. So it's from a memory experience of mine, and I'll just flash it back and throw it back to not too long ago, but my grey hairs and my age, I feel a lot older than I probably am, but it was actually in relation to my first day as a pre-reg pharmacist working in a community pharmacy, and it was in a pharmacy that I knew well. I had done a lot of volunteering work there, so I knew the staff, knew the dispensary, knew my tutor extremely well before I even started it. And on the first day of me working, he took me in the dispensary and said, "You're going to act like the responsible pharmacist today, and I'm just going to coach you through this and guide you through this." So I was like, yeah, easy, a doddle. I've done this too many times in my experience. So the first prescription comes in, and you can imagine I'm there, confident as hell. Saw it, codeine, 30 milligram tablets, 28 pack, easy prescription. I thought, this is brilliant. Quickly whipped it around, grabbed it off the shelf, started to look at it, looked at the PMR, checked all the expiry dates, thought, done, I'm finished with this, easy peasy prescription. So my tutor comes across, checking the prescription, looking at it, he goes, "I think you need to check this again." And to my shock and horror, I picked clopidogrel, I picked cocodamol, 30 milligrams over 500, 100 pack, and I labelled it with so much confidence and so much richness. I nearly then had a complete meltdown in the dispensary on my first day of being a pre-reg. And my tutor looked at the whole dispensary, started laughing at me because I was literally having a meltdown. I thought I was going to fail the whole year. And what I soon realised out of that whole experience, firstly, my tutor told me to just get over myself, and which is you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn from them. But what I also learned at that valuable moment is rushing these type of things is never a good thing. And actually, pharmacists play a really important role of being the custodians of medicine safety and ensuring that people get the right medicines at the right time, and not to rush these things. Medicines are important technologies. They can either make you feel really well or make you feel really not well. And taking your time around these processes and having a mechanism in place to do it safely is fundamentally important. But every time I see codeine, I get a bit of palpitations. Whenever I see it mentioned, whenever someone talks to me about it, whenever I prescribe it, I'm triple checking it before I do it. And lastly, the second point is the pharmacogenomic element to codeine is phenomenal. When I look at its potential, it's the most highest prescribed and dispensed drug within the UK, one of the most costliest medicines to the NHS, but has a hugest potential to make some massive differences to really tailored medicines optimization and safety interventions for the future. And that's why I find it quite fascinating.
Ultra rapid metabolizers, yeah?
Yep, that's it.
It's currently up in court, though, isn't it? They're looking at taking codeine linctus off the shelves, aren't they? Which is probably no bad thing.
Okay, well, we'll definitely accept codeine into the oral apothecary.
Can I break with convention and just come in with one little thing? My first time in a pharmacy was during a Christmas break from college. I had no idea about pharmacy at all, and I was I was just hanging around the dispensary, and somebody came in and asked for codeine linctus. And the pharmacist on duty did a pretty good job of saying, well, actually, sorry, we're out of codeine linctus today. And I chirped up I said, no, there's a huge bottle of it back here. There's 5 litres of the stuff back here.
The funny thing is, James, that I did exactly the same when I worked in my dad's pharmacy. He did the same thing, and I went, no, I've got some here, Dad.
Little did I know. We've crashed your drug, Ravi.
Yeah.
No, I used to work in East London in my community pharmacy, really high deprivation area, and similar, Jamie. We were always told be very careful about who you give it to, and make sure you ask 50 million questions before you even try and give it. And it was something that we tried to avoid generally. And I think, like Paul was saying, maybe not a bad thing in terms of its future.
Like all drugs, they've got a place, but we've got to work out where that is. So great, we'll definitely accept codeine, Rav. And what about a career anthem then? What are you going to give us for this?
So again, I really took a long time to decide this. The song I've chosen is Jackie Wilson, Higher and Higher, 1967.
Yes.
Wow, classy.
And the reason why, so to give you context, and I'm not afraid to admit this, I was born in 1989. So when I was thinking about a song, I was thinking about my A-levels and university, and the song that prompts you just before going into your university exam, that just gets you in that mood. And I was thinking about, I went from 50 Cent, Eminem, Kanye West, Drake, and I just thought, well, that probably isn't the right type, because not all the lyrics of those individuals will appeal to everyone in that narrative. So the reason why I chose this is primarily because it was an important moment in my life. I grew up in North London on a council estate with my mum, dad, and my sister, and every single week we would have a dance-off in our living room when I was a kid. And this was a song that was on my dad's playlist. And always used to have a dance-off with my family every single weekend, every Friday, every Saturday. And it's probably a reason when, whatever day you have it, whether it be positive, up and down, you can listen to it and it makes you feel good. And it takes you back to that moment of happiness. And it's probably also reinstates my family mean a lot to me, the reason why I'm motivated and why we're all trying to push the barriers of where we all want to go in our careers and etc. and that. So that's probably why I chose it and why it means a lot to me.
That's a great choice, Ravi. We'll definitely take that into the Oral Apothecary Spotify playlist. And you are one of the most motivated people I've met, so that's saying something. So we're really well done, and yeah, great track. And what about a book then for listeners that you might want to recommend?
So this is in relation to sort of genomics, actually, The Gene, An Intimate History, written by Siddharam Mukherjee. And this individual's, this book is quite an interesting book. So it's written by a sort of cancer doctor, physician, who is an expert in stem cell biology and cancer genetics. And the book is intriguing, controversial, exciting, but it reflects on gene and genetic history, all from Aristotle, Crick, Watson, to 21st century health scientists that have mapped the human genome. And what it basically talks about the power and the good and the bad of genetics within the future world. And what I liked about the book in particular, it talks about the complex interplay between genetics with your environmental factors and with other factors that can impact you and your family during generations of passing on your genetic codes and genetic DNA, for instance. But it also talks about the human nature of it, that genetics should be one part of the picture and should never define your future, particularly in terms of your prognosis to health or where you may end up in your life, for instance, as well. So I like the book because it's very controversial, but it just spurred my sort of passion for genomics and understanding where it could go for the future.
Oh, that sounds fantastic, and I'm just getting a real sense of passion from you on the subject. Is it that book that led you to that, or what was your route into this?
It's a really good. So I was working at NHS England when I was looking at postgraduate stuff. So I'd obviously done my prescribing. I'd worked at general practice, And I was looking for the next sort of hot topic. What was interesting? A combination of a mentor at the time and the chief scientific officer at NHS England were talking about genomic medicines, and I've been hearing lots about it, seeing lots of articles on it, lots of press releases from the NHS on progress on it. And I was then fascinated by personalised medicines. Someone released a policy around personalised care, and part of it mentioned personalised medicine. So I just started reading stuff around it. What do people mean by that? Personalised interventions, personalised medicines. And I came over a few academics across the world that had written some really good evidence pieces around pharmacogenomics. It might have been you as well, Paul, during your time at RPS Wales, and it just spurred on my thoughts for it. And at the time, they were offering scholarship applications to do genomic medicines masters, and I thought it was a good opportunity to be perfectly honest, because I saw sort of the future areas of genomics and what it could lead to for the profession. So I wanted to gain some expertise and knowledge within that space.
Excellent. Well, it does sound like a great read, and hopefully the listeners will agree, and we'll put that up, as we usually do, as where it lives in the Oral Apothecary Library. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ravi. The micro discussion paper that we've chosen to discuss today is from the European Journal of Hospital Pharmacy, which came out in March this year by Neil Powell and colleagues. And as we've already mentioned, it's actually looking at the thorny issue of penicillin allergy and whether or not it's possible to think about how to de-label people. It's a focus group that they did, 2 focus groups in fact, with 17 doctors, nurses and pharmacists at a district general hospital in England. And they're basically exploring how might we go about this, because obviously in an antimicrobial resistance world, there are a lot of people who are probably incorrectly labelled as having penicillin allergy. The paper is really fascinating and you should take a look. But have any of the apothecaries or Ravi themselves got any comments on this paper?
Well, first up, I think we need to give a shout out to Michael Wilcock, because I think it's probably the 3rd or 4th one of his publications that we've looked at during the Oral Apothecary. So Mike, who's based in Truro in the southwest in Cornwall, thank you. He's prolific at publishing his work and the department's work down there. It was submitted in 2019 and it's only just come to light. It's been in your editorial process for a while, STC.
Yes, as I do say, I am declaration of interest is that I am an associate editor on the EJHP, but I didn't pick this particular topic, but we thought that might be interesting from a genomics point of view, as well as the practicalities of how difficult it is, because we will all, any listener will know, there are plenty of people who they say they're allergic to penicillin, and when you ask them, because they had diarrhea.
Yeah. And, you know, when you look at the consequences, what are they? Increased costs of healthcare, increases hospital stays, more infections after surgery. There's and we end up getting channeled into using antimicrobials that we wouldn't want to use for these patients. So it's not, the classics, it's not a benign label, is it? That's the issue. But for me, it takes me back to my book recommendation in the first episode, and it's a great case of failure demand of something that we've introduced into the system ourselves, and now we're trying to fix, and it is so resource and labour intensive in trying to, but so worthwhile and so important.
So Jamie, you pinched my line there. I had exactly that comment written down about it was a classic example of failure demand, and that was what I was wondering is who and why are these people being labelled as penicillin allergic? And it is sort of like a badge, isn't it? And I think it's one of those pharmacy tropes. There's certain pharmacy things we always ask or say. If I say to you ibuprofen, the first thing that pops into your head is take it with food. And if I say penicillin, the first thing you'll say is allergic. So we perpetuate it by our behaviour, don't we, as well? And I'm not saying it's wrong to ask that. I'm just saying that there's a piece of work here around behaviour that is leading to labelling people in the first place, because I suspect while it's pharmacists here who are addressing the problem, it's possibly pharmacists and doctors who've done the labelling as well. So I think there's something here about operating up at the front end.
I mean, I think if you look back, parents back in the day it's harsh to blame parents sometimes, isn't it? But I think boys and girls have had viral infections.
Glandular fever.
Yeah, and so that's a big part of it, I think, if we look back. I was chatting to one of our antimicrobial pharmacists, and she said that, and so Kerry Phillips, who was presenting on the Celtic Conference a couple of weeks ago, she said that, Scotland are leading the way on this one. So they're not represented on the pod tonight. But if you haven't seen it already, I would recommend people go to the Scottish Antimicrobial Prescribing Group webpage on Healthcare Improvement Scotland, and the resources on penicillin allergy de-labelling there are quite comprehensive.
No, I think it's a challenge, and I think probably Steve will also reflect this. We see it a lot in general practice. When you go into questioning or asking more about the allergic response, it could have been from 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, and there is a real nervousness